Right, video number 4. Feminism, typical, and gender theory seem to have poisoned the mind of some rather emotionally charged, progressive thespians. You know the type of people I'm talking about. The ones that bang on about issues and equality, and it's obvious to everybody that they care because they read The Guardian and they drink chai latte and visit vegan festivals. The other week, the Actors UK Facebook page, and let's be honest, where the fuck else? Somebody had highlighted an advertisement where actors were needed for a promo advert on a sports channel featuring 2 men getting ready to watch the football match on TV. But as they're about to do so, both of their wives start to nag them. I ask you, does this sound like much of a far-fetched scenario? Still, wanting to watch the game, the guys look at each other and come up with an idea. Cut to their wives with tape over their mouths. The guys chink their beers together and then get settled as the game is about to begin. People went off on one. Oh, it's an outrage! Oh, such misogyny! I can't stand for gender tropes like this in this day and age. Putting tape over their wives' mouths. Such vile, abusive behaviour. Someone even suggested making an official complaint. Fuck me. An official complaint? I can imagine it now. I'd like to make an official complaint, please. Really? What about? The working class?
Now, you may be wondering why on earth I'm making a video about a poxy post on a Facebook page. Well, the Actors UK Facebook group, as well as a handful of others, has over 40,000 members made up of actors, directors and casting directors where people sell themselves and try to obtain work. And in this case, any men who defended the advert as a harmless bit of fun were spoken to as vile pigs condoning casual misogyny, and any women who defended the advert, as well as anyone's desire to go for the role, were flat out ignored. At one stage, 1 or 2 people said, well, if this comment thread has taught me anything, it's who to avoid working with, while others suggested that any casting director viewing the thread should consider denying some people of work opportunities entirely. Of course, because turning a Facebook comment thread into some sort of McCarthyist hit list is a real winning idea.
Supposed to be 4 months into 2018, but it's starting to feel a lot more like 1984. How comes I never come across these people in daily life? Yet there seem to be thousands upon thousands of them screaming moral outrage over social media. Definitely not the type of people down the pub watching a fucking football, I tell you that.
I'm telling you.
What you want, Sam?
Hey?
You want some?
What, the old Supremo, wouldn't
You
it?
want some or what?
Are you ready?
Get the whole equality thing, okay? Really, I'm a liberal. I believe in a welfare state. I'm pro-choice. I don't think that racism is acceptable. Gay rights. But equality is quite a broad word. What do you mean exactly? Equal amount of money, equal amount of happiness, equal amount of material possessions. Equality can mean fucking anything. What I think everybody does wish for are the equal rights and opportunities to live a happy and fulfilled life while being granted an equal level of respect as an individual, living, breathing human being. Wouldn't really occur to me that it should be any different. But there are a significant number of people lately, a lot of them women, accompanied by some purple and green haired men that look like some sort of breed of tropical fish, who seem to have a bit of a different idea of what equality should be and are determined to suck the fun out of life for the rest of us. Some of the worldly mysteries that visit the minds of some of these people that I know personally are:
I'm annoyed that I can't reach the ceiling in my house, even when using a ladder, but I don't want to ask a man if he can help me paint, because that would be unequalitist.
So, seeing how all of this is getting rather out of hand, let's go over a few things that I think are being rather lost in this pathological desire to create an artificial landscape of equality and gender parity. Now, I don't mean to trigger anyone here. Some of you may need to sit down for this one. But men and women have differences. Something else that people may find a bit distressing is that these differences are not all down to what a patriarchal society deems acceptable. We're animals. We evolved. Our evolutionary adaptive history is just as important as the environment.
Psychologist and former president of the American Psychological Association, Diane F. Halpern, in her book Sex Differences in Cognitive Abilities, writes, "Many psychologists and others are opposed to any comparison of men and women. Much of the opposition is based on the fear that when differences are found, the data will be interpreted and misused in ways that support a misogynist agenda or unwittingly provide support for the idea that there are proper roles for men and women."
People usually like to argue that the differences are societal, but if that's so, then surely we wouldn't see gender preferences seemingly related to humans in other species.
In a 2009 study titled Sex Differences in Rhesus Monkeys' Toy Preferences Parallel Those of Human Children, the authors of the study wrote, "We compared the interactions of 34 rhesus monkeys living within a 135 monkey troop with human-willed toys and plush toys. Male monkeys, like boys, showed consistent and strong preferences for wheeled toys, while female monkeys, like girls, showed greater variability in preferences. The similarities to human findings demonstrate that such preferences can develop without explicit gendered socialization."
Now, a lot of people like to get their knickers in a bit of a twist when it comes to children and toys. That toy companies are to blame for perpetuating gender stereotypes, but I'm afraid doesn't quite work like that. So in order to make this video a little bit more engaging, I'm going to drop in a clip of author, philosopher, resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute and lifelong Democrat, Christina Hoff Sommers.
Children are not gender neutral. And if 40% of millennials believe otherwise, that's probably because most of them have not yet had kids. The White House summit was heavy on activists and motivational speakers and thought leaders, but light on evidence. Thanks to toy manufacturers themselves, whose survival depends on understanding their customers, solid research exists, but its conclusions don't fit the movement's narrative. Consider what Lego discovered after 4 years of investigating and interviewing thousands of children to figure out what it would take to get girls to buy construction blocks. In one experiment, boys and girls were asked to build a castle. Now for the boys, the castle was just the hastily constructed scene in which the main event, the battle between the Lego figures, took place. For girls, the castle was central, and they wanted to know what was going on inside. Unlike the boys, the girls wanted detailed and personalized characters so that they could imagine them as friends. Trigger warning. Here is a toy that captures the imagination of vast numbers of little boys. And here is what works for little girls. And girls and their parents, they rewarded Lego for figuring out what they wanted. They purchased millions of sets.
Generally, men prefer working with things and women prefer working with people.
A 2009 study was conducted titled Men and Things, Women and People, a meta-analysis of sex differences in interests. Technical manuals for 47 interest inventories were used, yielding 503,188 respondents. Results showed that men prefer working with things and women prefer working with people. Men showed stronger realistic and investigative interests, and women showed stronger artistic, social, and conventional interests. Sex differences favouring men were also found for more specific measures of engineering, science, and mathematics interests. And if we take a quick look at the Times Higher Education's website course gender breakdown, then that's exactly what we get.
So why aren't there more women in all of the top jobs? Surely it's down to the patriarchy, stopping women from finding their way. As the previous study states,
the present study suggests that interests may play a critical role in gendered occupational choices and gender disparity in STEM fields.
Just think about yourself for a moment. You've come across many different things in your time: sports, music, films, places, people, activities. So many people exposed to so much, how do you suppose society dictates or moulds our interests more than biology might? How on earth does society manipulate you into having an interest in pottery or baking or wanting to be a swimming instructor? What is it about those things that makes you latch on? Surely it's something from within, isn't it? The gender wage gap! If you think these preferences are down to society, again, think of the rhesus monkeys! And if you don't want to consider the rhesus monkeys, then consider how men and women differ in their college majors. Here's a list of the 10 most financially rewarding majors compiled by the Georgetown University Center on Education and the Workforce. Men overwhelmingly outnumbered women in all but one of them.
1. Petroleum Engineering, 87% male. 2. Pharmacy, Pharmaceutical Sciences and Administration, 48% male. 3. Mathematics and Computer Sciences, 67% male. 4. Aerospace Engineering, 88% male. 5. Chemical Engineering, 72% male. 6. Electrical Engineering, 89% male. 7. Naval Architecture and Marine Engineering, 97% male. 8. Mechanical Engineering, 90% male. 9. Metallurgical Engineering, 83% male. 10. Mining and Mineral Engineering, 90% male.
As well as the fact that women, again, in general, are more concerned with having more of a work-life balance, starting a family, and not spending 80 hours a week devoted entirely to work while living out of a suitcase as a fucking CEO. Another study in the Journal of Economic Psychology in 2008 looked at the workplace gender gap.
Why are there so few women in information technology? Assessing the role of personality in career choices. We show that men and women differ systematically in their interests, and that these differences can account for an economically and statistically large fraction of the occupational gender gap.
Furthermore, sex differences in personality traits and gender-related occupational preferences were examined across 53 nations.
Examining the cross-cultural consistency of sex differences for 4 traits: extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism, and male versus female typical occupational preferences. Only sex-predicted means for all 4 traits, and sex-predicted traits means much more strongly than did gender equality or the interaction between sex and gender equality. The results suggest that biological factors may contribute to sex differences in personality, and that culture plays a negligible to small role in moderating sex differences in personality.
So I wonder if all of this stuff about preferences might mean anything when it comes to watching football on TV.
Like many other species, women tend to prefer men who are more reliable with high social status, and men tend to prefer women who appear to be fit for
Reproduction.
This can manifest itself in many different ways. Men in society can achieve high status by being good in their field. A top athlete, a musician, a surgeon, a dancer. We may say it's a gender trope to say that women are attracted to guys with flash cars, but turns out that's exactly the case. Women will rate the same man as either more or less attractive depending on whether he's driving a Porsche or like a Skoda. The same effect doesn't happen in reverse. A man will find a beautiful woman beautiful regardless of what car she's driving because, well, we're better people.
Saad, evolutionary behavioural scientist at the John Molson School of Business, Concordia University Research Chair in Evolutionary Behavioural Sciences and Darwinian Consumption, and the founder of the field of evolutionary consumption, writes, "One such product used by men is the proverbial sexy car. Men are overwhelmingly more likely to be car collectors, as well as being the majority of owners of the most expensive sports luxury cars, e.g. Ferraris, Lamborghinis and Maseratis. Ultimately, such vehicles serve as honest signals of one's high social standing, akin to how the peacock's tail is an honest signal of phenotypic quality."
Interestingly, when men are given a high-end sports car to drive, it actually increases our testosterone levels. Further still, when you give a guy a sports car to drive, it doesn't matter whether we're driving down, slowly cruising through like a busy cityscape with loads of people around to sort of like peer in the car and we're like, yeah. Or whether we're driving alone down a deserted desert strip, testosterone still goes up. We're just down to fuck now. Give us a car. Let's take a look at the finding that on the whole, men tend to have better spatial reasoning abilities compared to women.
A 1990 study was conducted into sex differences in spatial ability and the activity of 2 species of voles.
One species was monogamous, one couple of voles mating and living together, and the other species was polygamous, which just means one male vole goes around fucking the life out of everything. They found that only the polygamous species showed sex differences in spatial abilities, and the authors argued that the polygamous male voles have larger home ranges than monogamous voles, because the polygamous species needs to roam further to find multiple mates. The authors hypothesised that human males develop excellent spatial abilities during human evolutionary history because human males with these abilities, like polygamous male rodents, would be better at life skills such as hunting and finding mates, and therefore have a greater ability to enter the gene pool.
Hey!
Now, there are probably better examples that somebody else could give, but before this video goes on for too long, let's get back to that advert that I told you about that caused all of this fuss in the first place. Is it sexist to say that more men are engaged in sport? Or is it just life?
What is sport? Sports in the Western World by William Joseph Baker.
It all began as a form of survival. Prehistoric man lacked the protective fins of the fish, the sharp fangs, claws and horns and spikes of other animals. To avoid extinction, he tempered strength with cunning, endurance with agility. He first ran, jumped, climbed, swam and fought literally for his life. Over many millennia, he devised weapons to balance the odds. Scarcely is it a mere coincidence that primitive stones, clubs, and spears form the elementary shape of modern athletic equipment. Balls of all shapes and sizes, baseballs and cricket bats, hockey sticks and tennis rackets, as well as the discus and javelin, which have little changed over the centuries.
And I'm not sure if he spoke like that, but that's what I've gone with.
Males take greater risks as a sign of reproductive value.
I've gone for that voice again. I should give you...
You know, like males take greater risks. You know, like as a sign of reproductive value and thing, you know?
There you go. Got that instead. Haha. Examples of highly risky pursuits include base jumping, free soloing, big wave surfing, and cliff diving. Across varying cultures that require physical risk-taking as a rite of passage, it is always the men who engage in such pursuits. A 2008 study in the journal Evolutionary Psychology titled Sex Differences in Everyday Risk-Taking Behaviour in Humans also said the following.
We showed that humans are competent optimizers on such tasks, adjusting their arrival.
I don't need to do it like that. Adjusting their arrival times at a bus stop so as to minimise waiting time. Nonetheless, single males pursue a more risky strategy than single females by cutting waiting times much finer. Males are also more likely than females to cross a busy road when it is risky to do so. More importantly, males are more likely to initiate a crossing in high-risk conditions when there are females present in the immediate vicinity, but females do not show a comparable effect in relation to the number of males present. These results support the suggestion that risk-taking is a form of showing off used as mate advertisement.
Why are men more aggressive, and why do they hunt and engage in high-contact sports?
Dorian Fortuna explains, the fact that males are more aggressive and more violent is reflected by their anatomy itself. In many animal species they are heavier, more muscular, better armed with means of attack and defence. In humans, for example, the arms of men are on average 75% more muscular than those of women, and the top of a male body is 90% stronger than the top of a female body. Also, men are taller, they have denser and heavier bones, their jaw is more massive, their reaction time is shorter, their visual acuity is better, their muscle-fat ratio is greater, their heart is bulkier, their percentage of hemoglobin is higher, their skin is thicker, their lungs bigger, their resistance to dehydration is higher, etc. A study from Evolutionary Behavioral Sciences of the American Psychological Association titled Sex Differences in Sports Interests and Motivation, an Evolutionary Perspective concluded there are many converging lines of evidence that boys and men are substantially more interested than girls and women in sports, both in terms of participation and spectating. Moreover, the evidence suggests that this sex difference in sports interests occurs in all or nearly all societies. We also showed that there is mounting evidence for a reliable sex difference in sports motivation, with males typically showing greater competitiveness and risk-taking.
But what the fuck's any of that got to do with watching a football?
Again, in the Journal of Sport and Social Issues, The gender gap in the enjoyment of televised sports. The enjoyment differentiation by gender suggests that men extract gratification mostly from seeing athletic confrontations that emphasise combative coordination, where women are more gratified when seeing competition that avoids overt aggressiveness and highlights the stylish movement of individual bodies in terms of beauty.
Gender differences do not mean that a gender is better than another, or that the differences should be seen as deficiencies. And these are generalities. You can't look at statistics and then look at someone and then claim to think that you know anything about their abilities. And if you do, you're a dickhead. Sat down and told my mate Michael about all of this the other evening. He just looked straight back at me and went, "What's the problem?" I said, it's seen as sexist, misogynist, and gender tropes about sport. It's abusive because she had tape over her mouth. Blah, 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 blah. And he just looked straight back at me and went, 1, it's a joke. 2, it's real life. The other evening, I sat down in the front room to watch the football on the TV, and then Lauren started yapping away at me about saying, and then 5 minutes later, she ended up upstairs because I kept on telling her, get out of the way of the fucking TV! So, all up for equal opportunities and all of that, but can we stop denying, reality? It's really not doing anybody any favours. Oh, and finally, on the point that the women having tape over their mouths is, a sign of outrageous misogyny, there are many, many instances of real abuse that people can get angry about.
I can feel my face when I'm with you.
When crikey, a young girl gets her clitoris chopped off, or a woman in the Middle East gets buried up to her waist in sand and bludgeoned to death with rocks, and some people would steer clear of any firm condemnation out of fear of looking racist. But somebody comes up with a fun idea of 2 blokes just trying to watch the bloody football, fuck me, sparks are flying. Oh, that's whataboutery. Okay, whataboutery, some fucking modern day attempt to dodge the point entirely. It's not fucking whataboutery, it's completely valid. There's already lots of horrible stuff that you can get very angry about. There's no reason why we've got to pretend that some innocent advert like this on TV is as bad as some shit that already exists. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please do give it a like. And if you saw this video and you hated it and you hate me, share it. So then you can sit there with all your mates going, "Ah! Misogynist! Ah! All right! All right! All right!" I'm aware of the task I've set myself. Doing all of this research to courageously tell people of the truth. So it's a lonely road, a dark road, a thankless road, with a level of responsibility that most normal people wouldn't understand or desire. Rather like Batman. So see you later.